So I had gotten to 6 figures, and truth be told, we were no longer hungry. Life wasn't horrible, but I will tell you this for sure. I found myself constantly showing up as 2 different people. I constantly found myself like in front of these people, and I was like playing a game of like who I was or wasn't. I didn't want people to know that I didn't have all my shit together. I didn't want people to know that I wasn't perfect at home. I didn't want people to know that we had been sleeping on couches. I didn't want people to know that I had put my kids to bed hungry just years before. I didn't want people to know that I still had no clue where Dad was. I didn't want people to know. And even when I started hiring people and building networks, I realized that I was still living, not necessarily a sham, but I was only living at like 50% of myself. Because I constantly fought this battle of being the professional version of Tiffany, the home version of Tiffany, the mom version of Tiffany. Has anyone else ever felt like that? Okay. So it's like I found myself in this crazy endless cycle of constantly trying to accommodate all of these different roles that and I was like, this is not working. Once I made a decision to own my story, and I really want you to sit inside of this word when I say own my story. Like, once I made a decision to not just own my story, but I really and truly mean like own every part of my story. And when I say every part of my story, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because it's really easy to own your story and then you own parts of it. You own the parts that people want to hear or the parts that you want to share. You own the parts that are like, they're prettier. You know what I mean? They're not as bad. They're not as dramatic. They're not as trauma-filled. Once I made a decision to own all parts of my story, man, my whole world changed. I went from 6 figures to multiple 7 figures in a year. And it wasn't a matter of me saying to myself, you know what, I am going to change who I am or shift what I'm doing. I really and truly, honest to God, I just stopped apologizing for who I was. I decided that Tiffany Largie was enough. And not only was she enough, that she was enough as she was. Not the futuristic Tiffany. Not the one that was going to be thinner. Hell, it was definitely not going to be the one that was going to be thinner. Because everyone knows my philosophy. I believe fat keeps me warm. So I'm like, no, don't give me anything fat-free. I don't want it. But the truth is that for me, this concept of owning parts of myself, owning parts of who I was, owning some of the things that didn't seem so politically correct, that's what made me okay. That's what made me good enough. Who here in this room has said to themselves on the way here, whether it be on a flight or if you drove in, who has said to themselves, I just don't know that my story is good enough? Even though you were on this way to this event, even though you've told your story a handful of times, it's amazing how sometimes we can still find ourselves in a place where we're like, I just don't know that I'm good enough, or I don't know that my story is good enough. Here's how powerful story is. Not only does story allow me to build a multiple 6 and then a multiple 7-figure business and totally change my life and my legacy. But I can't tell you how many phone calls. Ashley and I were talking about this morning and Lisa yesterday in a meeting. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten on people saying, Tiffany, how did you do it? How did you fill an entire room